Disturbing allegations about accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and members of his social circle. Those allegations come from newly unsealed documents from a now settled court case against Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell. A woman claims that Maxwell groomed her to be a sex slave to Epstein and was trafficked to some of his most powerful associates. Among those associates, a former senator and a governor.
Headlines claim Trump is blocking testimony and Epstein victim has named him in court, but sources suggest this viral narrative might be misleading distortion of what's actually happening. We're not talking about minor technicalities or semantic distinctions. We're talking about reports that there is currently no public evidence any Epstein victim has accused Trump of sexual abuse during sworn testimony, that unsealed documents do list Trump as associate of Epstein, but multiple news outlets confirm these documents don't charge him with assault. That deposition from survivor Johanna Schoberg shows she was asked if she gave Trump massage and answered firmly no, denying any physical interaction. And what might make this moment so significant is how facts get twisted into misinformation. When someone's name appears in documents as associate, when survivor mentions someone while denying anything happened, when administration fights over which files get released versus blocking courtroom testimony, those are fundamentally different scenarios. But headlines blur these distinctions, creating impression that's more dramatic than evidence supports. And when misinformation spreads, it might actually protect Trump by giving his defenders ammunition to dismiss all criticism as fabricated rather than forcing real accountability based on documented facts. But before we break down what unsealed documents actually show versus what viral videos claim and why accuracy matters for real accountability, real quick. You cannot trust sensational headlines designed for clicks rather than truth. That's why we built Patrick Smith Show to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want analysis that actually separates Trump's documented connection to Epstein from fictional courtroom dramas and explains why spreading exaggerations undermines legitimate transparency demands, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what we need is pressure based on facts, not narratives that give Trump's team easy wins by pointing to falsehoods. All right, let's get into what's actually documented versus what's being claimed, because sources suggest understanding this distinction is critical for holding Trump accountable effectively. The real story involves Trump's name appearing in unsealed Epstein documents as associate, his administration fighting to control which files get released and limit internal reviews, survivors and lawmakers pushing for transparency about who was involved with Epstein's operation. Those are legitimate concerns worth discussing. But viral narrative claiming Trump is blocking victim testimony in court as survivor accuses him, sources suggest that's not happening. There's no scene where survivor is testifying about abuse while Trump's lawyers silence her. That's fabricated drama designed to generate outrage and clicks. And problem with spreading fabrications is it doesn't help accountability. It might actually undermine it by giving Trump defenders ability to point at exaggerations and say everything is made up, all criticism is fake news. When goal is real transparency and justice for survivors, accuracy matters more than sensationalism, because truth stands on its own without needing invented courtroom scenes. Let's start with what unsealed documents from early 2024 actually contain, because sources suggest this is where narrative begins before getting distorted. Court records linked to Epstein case were made public, naming several prominent men who had connections with Jeffrey Epstein. Among those names were Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and others. Documents laid out names, connections, flight logs, and sightings. That's significant development representing release of information that had been sealed for years. But here's critical distinction. Sources suggest none of these documents accuse Trump of sexual assault. Multiple news outlets, including NPR and Time, explicitly highlighted this fact. Being mentioned in papers means you had some connection with Epstein. Maybe you knew him, interacted with him, were at his properties or on his private jet. But being connected to him isn't same as being accused of participating in his crimes. Reports indicate it's concerning that Trump had ties to Epstein, given Epstein's history as predator trafficking underage girls. Anyone who crossed paths with him faces tough questions about what they knew and saw. But there's clear line between having questions to answer versus having actual evidence of wrongdoing. Think about why this distinction matters. Sources suggest journalism and accountability require maintaining that line even when it's easier to blur it for more dramatic story. Sensationalism might get clicks, but it undermines truth. And when truth gets undermined, real accountability becomes harder, not easier, because defenders can point to exaggerations as proof everything is fabricated. Reports indicate we should absolutely be asking what Trump knew about Epstein's crimes, why they were friends, why relationship ended, but asking those questions based on documented associations is different from claiming victims are accusing him of abuse in court when that's not what's happening. But let's examine specific example that gets twisted into misinformation because sources suggest Johanna Schoberg deposition illustrates how facts become distorted. Schoberg is Epstein accuser and survivor who gave sworn deposition in 2016 that has now been unsealed. During deposition, she was asked about spontaneous trip to Atlantic City and whether she had given Trump massage. Her answer was firm no. She denied any physical interaction with him. Think about what that actually means. Technically, yes, this results in survivor mentioning Trump in her testimony. Sources suggest his name came up in legal context. But when you look at actual content of what she said, she wasn't accusing him of abuse. She was stating that nothing happened between them. Reports indicate that's opposite of accusation. It's explicit denial of any contact. Yet when headlines claim Epstein victim named Trump in court, while technically accurate that his name was mentioned, the impression created doesn't match what she actually testified. And there's how misinformation works. Sources suggest you take genuine fact that victim named Trump. You strip away context of her words denying anything happened. You let people jump to conclusion that she must be accusing him. You create misleading impression that doesn't hold up against actual evidence. Reports indicate when people eventually discover truth, it feels like manipulation because that's exactly what it is. Being misled by those more interested in clicks than getting facts straight. And that manipulation doesn't help survivors get justice. It might actually hurt their cause by creating narrative that can be easily debunked, giving Trump defenders easy win. Share this video with everyone you know because there's broader pattern worth understanding. Sources suggest multiple times Trump's name appears in Epstein-related contexts without being accused of crimes. Virginia Roberts Giuffre named numerous powerful men in sworn depositions, including British royalty Prince Andrew, former Governor Bill Richardson, former Senator George Mitchell. All three strongly denied allegations. But Trump isn't on that list of men Giuffre accused. Reports indicate his connection to Epstein is documented through social interactions and business relationships. Those connections deserve scrutiny and raise legitimate questions. But scrutinizing documented connections is different from claiming victims are accusing him in court testimony when evidence shows otherwise. But let's talk about what Trump administration is actually fighting to control, because sources suggest this is real story worth focusing on rather than fictional courtroom scenes. In 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi informed Trump his name appeared in internal Epstein files. After that, administration took actions that angered transparency advocates. They denied existence of client list even though rumors circulated widely. They moved to end internal reviews and kept documents under wraps that many wanted to see. Think about why that matters. Sources suggest this frustrated not just survivors, but some of Trump's own supporters who expected him to be one finally bringing truth to light, exposing all powerful players connected to Epstein. Instead, his administration seemed more focused on covering things up than revealing secrets. Reports indicate Democrats are using obscure 1928 law to pressure Trump into releasing more documents. There's been congressional action with House Republicans occasionally teaming up with Democrats pushing for subpoenas. Survivors aren't remaining silent either. One victim openly stated, "We know the names," highlighting their own list of Epstein associates. And there's what this actually represents. Sources suggest genuine struggle happening over transparency regarding what gets released versus what stays hidden. It's clash between those pushing for full disclosure and administration controlling information flow. Reports indicate that's real story worth discussing and legitimate reason for concern. But it's different from Trump trying to block victims' testimony in court. Real suppression we're talking about focuses on documents and investigative records, not silencing people in courtroom. When we accurately describe what's happening, document suppression and transparency battles over file releases, we can pressure Trump effectively based on his actual actions. But when we spread narrative about blocking courtroom testimony that isn't happening, we give his defenders easy talking point to dismiss everything as lies. Share this with everyone because there's Jack Smith connection that gets conflated. Trump filed motion to keep second volume of Smith's final report on classified documents case under wraps. This isn't related to Epstein directly. It's completely separate investigation about different issues. Sources suggest critics point out irony in Trump wanting this report hidden alongside Epstein files. They see pattern where Trump attempts to block damaging information on various fronts. Reports indicate that's fair reflection of his behavior. But when you mix all these topics together, Epstein files, Jack Smith reports, victim depositions, document suppression, congressional subpoenas, you create impression that's more intense than facts of each situation warrant. It can give false impression everything is linked in one huge conspiracy, when reality is these are separate issues with own contexts. But step back and consider why media literacy and accuracy matter for real accountability, because sources suggest this is critical point many people miss. When you buy into exaggerated stories and share them, it doesn't help hold powerful people accountable. It might actually make it simpler for defenders to sweep legitimate concerns under rug. They'll point at rumors and say, look, it's all fabricated. Reports indicate that undermines truth rather than exposing it. Every time misinformation spreads about Trump and Epstein, it provides ammunition for his team to dismiss valid criticisms. Think about what real accountability requires. Sources suggest we need to stick to documented facts. Trump is mentioned in documents as Epstein associate. That's documented. His administration is fighting to limit which files get released. That's documented. Survivors are pushing for transparency and naming individuals outside formal courts. That's documented. Reports indicate those facts raise serious questions about what Trump knew, what he saw, why friendship ended, why his administration is suppressing information. We should absolutely be demanding answers to those questions, but we should be demanding them based on truth, not fabrications. And there's what we should legitimately be concerned about. Sources suggest Trump's connection to Epstein is troubling. They knew each other, hung out together. Trump made comments about Epstein liking younger women. At some point, things soured between them, but details remain murky. Reports indicate public deserves answers about what Trump knew and saw. Administration's handling of Epstein files is concerning. If there's information about influential figures involved in Epstein's crimes, that needs to be shared. Justice for survivors is paramount. When there are moves to limit disclosure, it raises questions about what's being hidden and why. Sources suggest broader pattern of suppression is concerning. Trump's efforts to block Jack Smith report and limit Epstein file releases show trend of fighting transparency across multiple issues. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show because there's what we can do about it. All those concerns are legitimate. Sources suggest you can feel worried about them without falling for fictional narratives, claiming victims are silenced in courtrooms. It's entirely possible to advocate for transparency without spreading misinformation. We can hold Trump accountable while accurately discussing his actions and things he tries to block. Reports indicate before diving into dramatic narratives, we should check actual facts. Ask what source is, what claims are being made, whether there's solid evidence behind them. Context often gets stripped away, and sometimes we might find ourselves believing things that aren't backed by real record. So here's what's actually happening versus viral fiction. Trump is mentioned in unsealed Epstein documents as associate, but not accused of assault by any victim in those documents. Survivor Johanna Schoberg mentioned Trump in deposition while explicitly denying anything happened between them. His administration is fighting to control which Epstein files get released, denying client list exists, limiting internal reviews. Survivors and lawmakers are pushing for transparency with some bipartisan congressional support for subpoenas. Sources suggest those are real issues deserving attention and pressure for accountability. But narrative claiming Trump is blocking victim testimony in court as survivor accuses him, that's fabricated drama not supported by evidence. When we spread exaggerations, we undermine real accountability by giving Trump defenders ammunition to dismiss all criticism as fake news. Question is whether we focus on documented facts that stand on their own requiring answers, or whether we get distracted by sensational fiction that makes accountability harder by mixing truth with lies, making everything easier to dismiss.